Hello, hello. It's 7:15. I think we're ready to get started. I want to welcome everybody. We have 78 participants. I'm very excited about that. I am Lee Erickson. I am the Chief Amplifier of the Happy Valley LaunchBox, which is the Penn State Business Accelerator. And tonight we are going to have an amazing panel of accomplished founders here to share their experiences and some lessons learned. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. In no particular order. First, I want to introduce Melissa Shepke Morzano. She is the founder and CEO of Tassl. She founded Tassl in 2014. Tassl is an online centralized alumni management tool to help universities with alumni engagement, and it helps them track and measure non-giving engagement. She has 42 clients on her platform, and she recently closed her first round of Series A funding. So congratulations to you on that. I also want to introduce Kathryn Dougherty. She's the founder and CEO of Spritz Beverage Company. Spritz was founded in 2016, and it's basically a line of sparkling non-alcoholic craft tea infusions that is really designed to appeal to women and female athletes. And Kathryn is working with her team to help celebrate the everyday victories that really kind of lead to extraordinary milestones. She has shipped product to 40 different states and is in the process of raising funding to expand. So welcome, Kathryn. I also want to introduce Jess Weiner. She is the CEO and founder of Talk to Jess. She's been an entrepreneur for 26 years, and her company is a consultancy that works with Fortune 500 companies to help them better reflect media, people in their media and their marketing and their advertising. She was named by Fast Company as one of the most creative people in business. That is great, in the areas of diversity and education. And she worked with Mattel to create a more inclusive Barbie. I love that. And she also was the driving force behind the Dove Real Beauty campaign, which I'm sure many of us have seen. I'm going to ask really quickly about if Beverly is on. And I'm going to assume not. So Beverly will probably join us. Anyway, I'm going to start with a couple of questions. But for all of those of you attending, please at any time add questions to the Q&A. We will try to get to as many of those as we can. I've had the pleasure of talking and learning about these panelists, so I know you're going to hear a lot of really great information. And one thing I think to think about is the different, oh, there's Beverly. Beverly, hi. Let me introduce Beverly really quickly. Okay. Beverly is the founder and president of Strokes and Slants. She founded that in 1989, and it provides court qualified expert witnesses for cases that involve handwriting identification, fraud, and malpractice. And she has built this business to where she has like 3 offices, Jamaica, London, and US. She, like Jess, has written some best-selling books, and she was recently the lead expert on a Smithsonian Channel Emmy, can't even say those words, Emmy-nominated episode. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. Anyway, stick those questions in if you have. I'm going to get started, and basically, why don't we start? I'm going to kind of work down the Brady scale. Why don't we start with you, Melissa, but we'll get to everyone. And what I want to have you each talk about at first is, you know, there's many challenges that come with starting and growing a business. So what was, in hindsight, your biggest challenge or hurdle? And what did you do to overcome that?
Yeah, so when I first started my company, I left corporate America, and I really just jumped into a startup world. I knew nothing about startups. I did not go to school to be an entrepreneur. It was really just, there was an idea I had, and I felt really strongly about it, and I validated in the market and just really wanted to do it, but I didn't know anything about, you know, running my own company or what resources were even available for me as a startup. So just navigating that landscape of the complete unknown was really challenging at first. When I was in school at Penn State, entrepreneurship wasn't as sexy as it is now. It kind of meant you were unemployed if you were an entrepreneur when I graduated. And so, you know, just finding my feet and learning all the lingo and building all of the resources and the mentors was so important. And I was very fortunate being here in Philadelphia to fall really into just an amazing community of startups and a startup culture and everything that's been happening at Penn State. That's been super, super helpful for me.
So was it the network that you built that helped you the most?
Absolutely. There's so many things that you don't know. And I watched women and men pitch their companies thinking, man, they must know everything. And it's just, they're doing the same things that I ended up doing, where it's you're asking the experts and you're learning from them, and you're not afraid to fail and ask questions when you don't know.
Excellent. Jess, how about you? What was your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
I would say, look, I graduated in 1995 and I graduated with 3 degrees from Penn State that guaranteed me to make no money. So I graduated with a women's studies degree, a classics degree in theater. Okay. So I had no idea that what I was going to do was going to be called an entrepreneur. I have never worked for anybody else my entire life. I started my business when I was 21. I would say what worked against me was I did not understand the space that I was going into, as far as it was a little bit of necessity. I was trying to figure out how to take all these things that I love, that I studied, and what do I want to make from that will pay my bills, to be quite honest. And then I would say that part of what was my challenge and my obstacle became my opportunity, which was that I was building an education program and I was building a consulting business, and at the time just didn't exist for companies. I was taking a lot of what I had done as a student at Penn State with social activism and in my theater program, creating socially relevant plays. And I was able to take some of those messages into companies and to corporations. And so I found my way over time, figuring out how to get paid for the things that I love to do, to talk to businesses about social impact and, and social equity and how to bring and social issues. But I would say that for a long time, I ran on pure instinct, to be quite honest. I don't come from a trust fund. I didn't raise any money to start my business. My entire business has been self-funded for 26 years. And now I have a staff of 10 people and, run a multi-million-dollar company, but that is 26 years later. And so I just always posit that in to say everyone's journey is different. And now if I were some of these, other incredible founders, I would have maybe a different network to tap into. But I think my hustle and my, and my drive were really the big opportunities that shifted it for me.
Excellent. Okay. Kathryn.
So for me, we're still a pretty young business. We launched in January of 2020. And so I could certainly make the most obvious comment around what challenge we faced in the past 12 months, but I'll skip that one for now. I think we're all pretty familiar with that. I would say, kind of like what Melissa said, my background is corporate America. So I spent 10 years at Johnson & Johnson, which is one of the most process-oriented companies in the world and is never a company that worries about cash. And coming from that into, my own company, which is very not process-oriented and constantly worries about cash, was quite the adjustment of mindset. And so I think that there were 2 things that really kind of came to mind for me. The first one was a bit of a shift in my own personal attitude about don't go for perfection. You're never going to get it in entrepreneurship. Just try to keep moving forward. So the mantra, progress, not perfection, became my daily thing. Just today, I'm going to move the ball forward. Some days it's going to be a millimeter. Some days it's going to be a yard. Some days I'm going to have a home run. I realize I'm mixing analogies, but you all kind of understand. And that just, once I sort of eliminated that feeling of everybody else knows what they're doing and I'm the one who has no clue how to run a small business, that really kind of opened up my eyes to I can just keep pushing forward and keep figuring it out. So that was one. And then the other thing that I think everybody else sort of hit on is just the realization that because a lot of us, and I guess all of us really, don't exactly have the perfect handbook to do this. Being able to ask others for advice and guidance and help, and it's amazing what people will do to help you. As Lee mentioned, we're in our very first ever fundraise. We're going to do our seed round. I have never built a pitch deck. I have never built the necessary financial models. And there are fellow founders here in Columbus who have shared all their pitch decks, all their financial models, cash flow models, P&Ls, balance sheets, all of it. And these are things that typically, you know, require NDAs. And these are people who are willing to say, you don't have to go into this test without, you know, somebody having helped you. Like, here are the answers. Here's how you can structure it. Here's what a data room looks like. And being willing to ask for help and then accept it has been an amazing, amazing way to keep hitting that mantra of every day, you know, keep moving the ball forward, keep having progress.
All right, excellent. All right, and Beverly, biggest challenge and how you overcame it.
Good evening, everybody. Biggest challenge to convince people that handwriting analysis was a business that would be credible and feasible. So that was the first hurdle. And then the second hurdle is trying to, I stopped trying to sell what I was doing and just move forward knowing that it would work. So, and then the second was financing, and no one obviously would finance a small business when technology was moving progressively. So it's like, how is this handwriting going to fit into the next era that we're moving into? And here I am now in my 32nd year. Yay!
Yay! Yeah.
And 3 offices in 3 different countries. So how I overcame it, I stopped listening to the naysayers, self-finance like Jess, credit cards, my house, you know, just whatever, sometimes family. So yeah, that's how I kept going. But the more, I think I didn't even become remotely successful until my 10th year.
Yeah.
So when people start up and they're like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm like, yeah, grunge a little.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And I think but again, that's the beauty of this one question. We've understood that there are similar challenges, but everybody goes about starting business differently, right? And I think that's a huge takeaway just after one question. So let's take another one. All right. So, you know, we know that diverse teams in terms of gender, ethnicity, and background are more likely to create novel and innovative and disruptive solutions, but the startup world and a lot of the support resources are made up primarily of a single demographic, and that's generally white men, right? And so what one piece of advice would you give women in terms of navigating a male-dominated world? And I guarantee for your audience, you're going to hear again some really different answers. So we'll start with Kathryn, and then so we keep track of it. We'll start with Kathryn.
Okay, so I'll probably frankly build a little bit off of my answer to the previous question, which is I have found in the business community of other female founders, there is a huge appetite to see change in this area, to see more women starting companies, building companies, leading, growing, raising capital, exiting, reinvesting into that next generation of female founders. And what I have found is that the number one thing that I would say is asking women in particular for help who have felt the challenges of being a female founder and who can empathize and sympathize with what that journey looks like and what it's like to sometimes be pitching a VC and not seeing yourself reflected in that demographic at all. Having such completely different life experiences and perspectives from that group, and being able to try to explain to them why your concept matters. I think, you know, Sarah Blakely did this beautifully with Spanx. You know, nobody really understood her concept, but like all the women got it. So recognizing that within this cohort, there's a huge appetite to see change, and people want to help each other. I mentioned, you know, that people are sharing decks and they're sharing models. And it is a lot of women because they're saying, you know what, like I struggled through this, you don't have to.
Right.
So really reach out and recognize that you're going to have to navigate some really challenging things, but you can build a pretty amazing support network to help you with all of that.
Awesome. Beverly, what one piece of advice would you give in terms of navigating the entrepreneurial landscape these days?
Well, I don't focus on being a woman. I know I am a beautiful woman, but I don't focus My focus is on my results. What am I giving to my client?
Mhm.
And how best can I do that? However, I do believe chivalry is not dead. And they are always a group of men and people that can help you. So that we just have to band together as women. I mean, I come from a female dominated family, so men are really kind of invisible in my world. So, and when they do surface, I see them differently. I see them as princes and kings because there's so few of them in our home. The result, I think, is the bottom line for me, is that I just chip away at what I do for years. And I was very much at the beginning, very lonely because just totally like fighting against the FBI and Scotland Yard, and it was only men. And then every now and again, I'd go to a conference and meet another woman, and she wasn't, receptive to me. So it's like, oh, you're here now.
Interesting.
I just chipped away and worked on the result, the line. What am I giving to my client, and how best can I give that my client the service that I'm offering it? And what I also try to do is to anticipate their needs. Sometimes they come with a document and they're not sure where to get the other document. And so we've researched all the places where those signatures and documents can be found to speed the process along.
Okay, excellent. Jess, how about you?
I would say that the reason why we're typically imbalanced in this field, right, is exactly what all four of us talked about in the beginning, which is about our relationship to capital. And the number one reason we know that small businesses fail is undercapitalization. So I think, one of the things we have to be realistic about are the systemic barriers as to why the field is imbalanced, right? And so access to capital, access to support and network has just been inequitable. And we are working to change that. And there are wonderful folks. I would urge people, obviously, to check out what Arlen Hamilton is doing. My friend Natalie Molina Nino wrote a book called Leapfrog Hacks about founders and entrepreneurial startups who can leapfrog over things that have been often set up as barriers, especially second generation or first generation Americans. And anyway, there's a lot of resource out there, but we're not the predominant focus yet. And so I think, one of the things I much like Beverly, sort of look at I try to look at my work, even though my work has been focused on, democratizing representation specifically for women and girls in media marketing and advertising. But I look at this as not a net sum game. In my work and in my field, I need everybody to play. I need everybody, especially the gatekeepers, and still the financial and marketing gatekeepers for me tend to be men. I often find that one of the best kind of, opportunities that we have is to challenge and speak other founders' names into rooms where they normally wouldn't be represented and where they're not there. And so much like Kathryn has been experiencing generosity from other founders, and I'm guessing female founders that have, stepped forward, I think that there are lots of allies out there if we can engage and ask for it. I also think that the other part of this is not waiting to be invited to the table.
Right.
And just making our own damn new table. And so I think, part of it is it's a balance, right? It's a balance of honoring the system that exists. And it's a balance about, because you have to play a little bit in that game. And then it's a balance of dismantling that system so that you can do it a little bit differently. And so, I don't know, for me, I guess that's at the DNA of how I look at that. But look, she who has the gold makes the rules, and we need more access to gold, and we need to be able to, to talk about that. So one of the things on a basic level, Lee, that I do with my employees and with people that I mentor and everything is I like to talk about money. What does it cost? What are you spending? I think women in particular need to speak more openly about, about money to get more comfortable with that, because I just think in general, and this is somewhat stereotypical, but there's truth to it, men have felt historically more comfortable talking about money than women. And so if money is a part of the unlock for us, then we've also got to get comfortable talking about it.
Awesome. So Melissa, what would your one piece of advice be in terms of navigating that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the points that were made, and kind of want to build off a little bit of everybody's, but like Beverly said, you have to go in the room not thinking you're the woman and, just being who you are. I would say definitely take advantage of the benefits of being a woman to get in the room, specifically around fundraising. You know, a lot of venture capitalist groups and angel groups, they do want to see more women. So getting in the room, I would say, probably easier for me for some groups than white male peer of mine. But once you're there, you got to know your stuff, and you got to prove to them that you know the numbers and you know the tech and you know the business that you're selling, and really blow them away that way. Early on, we did a $500,000 round that we closed fairly quickly, and then we did a $1.2 million round. And you just got to get comfortable with, you know, asking for a lot of money to do the things that you want to do. And it's crazy when they give it to you, but it's, you know, you have to prove yourself and show that why you're the best person to be doing what you wanted to be doing.
So I'm going to mix it up because I'm going to go around with you guys. And I noticed there's one question in the Q&A, but others, please send it in. So all of you have talked in some way about network, and it's okay not to know, and we say at the LaunchBox, okay not to know, but it's not okay to not go find out, right? So you all talked about your network, right? And I know in my career, I've had male and female, you know, mentors and networking, and it's been wonderful. I've found people that could help me. So what piece of advice or what action item might students who are listening in today take to start to build a solid network, right? Is it just anybody and everybody? Is it, I got to find people with certain skills? Do you have any advice for them on some tactics that they could use to build their network? And we will start with Beverly this time.
Oh, to build your network.
Yeah.
You have to identify what it is that you are, well, two things. What is it that you want to achieve with the product, or so identify that demographic. Identify the people around that demographic that can help you inside. And so when I got started, I went straight to the Black community. Because I knew that there was nobody in there doing what I was doing. So let me start there. And so that's where I started, and then moved outwards and got the clients. So I started with the bread and butter clients, and then mushroomed into, you know, government agencies and other. People that even now still get surprised when I show up that, oh, she's a woman. Oh, she's Black. Oh, she's, oh, so there's all these little barriers that I've had to.
Right. Right. Let's go to Kathryn. One piece of advice for starting to build that network.
I think number one, know why you want to build your network. I think that's a lot of like what Beverly said, like have an objective. So for me right now, my focus on network building is around the world of fundraising. And so, you know, make sure you know why you want to get insight from people and what that purpose is. Otherwise, you know, it's like, you don't have a destination, any road will take you there kind of thing. So start with that. And then the second thing I would say is, you know, you just start with people that you know, right? And so if you know a founder who's raised capital, you know, start talking with her or him, and then ask them for an introduction to someone in their network who can help you. And you can start to kind of like, you know, like you just kind of keep moving forward little by little. And eventually you're suddenly talking to this person who's raised $500 million in his life and knows exactly how to do this and has done it 20 times and is going to send you 3 decks and 2 financial models and coach you through it for free. And, you know, that person doesn't just fall into your lap. You know, that was like an intro from a friend who knew another friend, and I kind of kept working through the system. So have a clear objective, and then just start with sort of the people who you know are potentially connected to other people. Almost like that kind of like LinkedIn, you know, second degree or third degree, whatever, but like in real life, kind of.
Yeah, excellent. Melissa.
Yeah, so my big advice would be to organize and stay organized with it. going to as many events as I went to in the Philly startup community, events at Penn State, you're going to meet so many people. Like there were points where I had stacks and stacks of business cards of people that I met, and having that organized in a way that you can easily access people. Like I use a system that's hooked into my Gmail where it tags every person who emails me as a contact. I have tags on them if they are startup resources, if they're legal resources, if they're from ed tech, if what industries they're from, so that you can very easily navigate, and when you have a question, find the right people to answer it for you. So starting off organized, I'd say, is like the thing I wish I did. At some point I had like several interns like plug in all these business cards for me, but it was something that I wish I did earlier on when I started my company.
So Jess, how did you manage all this? Because I know your network has got to be huge.
It is.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, I might say something somewhat counter to all this, because when I hear network, I think transactional. And I actually think relationships are the currency of business. So the one thing I might add into this is, and I had the benefit, and it is a benefit from my point of view of starting my business and my career at a time where I didn't have social media platforms and quick ways to meet people. So I'm a collector of relationships. And one of the things I will say is that no networking event has ever gotten me to the relationships that I've had out like quicker than me cultivating real relationships with people from a lot of different backgrounds and focusing more on what you can do with each other and for each other versus transactional. So obviously, look, I teach also now at USC. So I have students and I'm consulting and I do all this stuff. And the thing that drives me crazy the most is when people say, can I pick your brain? No, you cannot. My brain is not for picking.
Leave my brain alone.
Yeah, leave my brain alone. But I often respond if somebody comes to me to create a relationship, to be relational in that, right? To tell me a little bit more than just the transaction. So I guess I wanted to add that in there because I think over time, my network has become what it has because I've invested in really also getting to know people and spend time with people and be there for other people as well versus just can you get me an intro here, whatnot. And also just to be fair, I wasn't ever in a position of raising money for my business. So I do think the advice that Kathryn gave and Melissa gave is excellent as far as how to work your network when you have them. Excellent. I also love to encourage folks to cast a large net of people you want in your life, because you never know what door they could open for you or who they know or how they can help support you. So when I go in, anytime I go in less transactional and more relational, I've gotten more business than I can imagine. All of my business right now is incoming. I do not market for any of my clients, and I never have. And
that's great advice, right? Because you are trying to create a long-term relationship with them.
Right.
The other thing that I know that I used to do when I would network, to your point, Melissa, is somebody would give me a card. I always wrote down one or two things in the moment.
Yep.
And even said to people, excuse me, I'm just going to make a couple notes because I want to remember this conversation, and it's not considered rude at all. People might be actually a little flattered. Because when you get back from the conference or the meeting or the networking event, you're like, what? Sometimes I'll even write down, what they look like, or that they talked about this, or met them standing near the shrimp, something just to jog my memory. So
that's why I hate the people with the laminated business cards, because you can't write on them. Yeah. But I have a column in my like Gmail database system that has like, how did you meet them? Like, and
what is that service that you use, Melissa? What's the add-on?
It's called Streak. So it's a plugin. Yeah. It organizes also sales pipelines. So I have a pipeline for sales, and then I have a pipeline for my business connections in different categories. So, and
in the beginning, you can just bundle them together or put them in Excel and get to the point where you have so many connections, you've got to organize it. But so I'm going to jump to a question that somebody sent in. Vivian asked, what was it like taking the leap of faith to leave corporate America and start your own venture? What things encouraged and pushed you to do this? So we'll just start with Jeff. I don't think we'd start with you first, so we'll get it right. What encouraged you and pushed you? Now you didn't do that, right? So let me.
No, I was going to say start with somebody who did that.
Yeah. So how was it scary just not doing the
Yeah.
traditional thing? And what
Yeah.
pushed you to do that? And then we'll flip it around for the other.
Well, I mean, so here's the true story. I graduated in 95. I was in a relationship at the time. I moved with him to Indianapolis, which also was like, I don't know how that was not in my plans. And so I knew nobody. And so what I did was I took I had all these degrees, and I ended up taking one more class, a community college class on grant writing. And part of the end result of the class was you wrote a grant to see if you would get funded. And so I didn't necessarily want to go into nonprofit work. I was just figuring out how to raise money. And that was the portal of which I was like, okay, I'm a theater person. I want to write plays. I want to speak, to audiences. So I'm going to go and raise money. And the grant that I got from my final exam in this class was $5,000 from Eli Lilly's pharmaceutical company, sells Prozac. I wrote a play that talked about bulimia and eating disorders. And so I put those two things together. And with that $5,000, I started my first business. And it was a nonprofit theater company. I did not understand how to budget and how to plan. So I made that $5,000 stretch for like 7 months and like really piecemeal together my business. And so all of that is to say, I just kept finding, I've always let curiosity lead me along the way. But one thing I'm very good at, and I don't know how I got good at this. I think I've honed it over the years. I'm very good at sniffing out how to rob Peter to pay Paul. I will figure out a way to get paid doing what I love. And so I was like, pharmaceutical company, great. I got money from you. I don't want to sell your drugs, but I want to raise awareness. And for me, that was the beginning of corporate social responsibility work, right? It was like, how do I align with businesses? Where's our shared mission, our shared values? How do what role? These are the questions I ask myself that encourage me to keep going forward. I could be a bridge for these folks to reach their business goals. This is why I think relationships are the currency of business. They want to reach young women. So do I. Where do our shared missions align? Where do they not? And where's there a business opportunity there? And I just, kept bringing my experience on the road with real humans to marketing and advertisers and saying like, look, let me fill in the gap and let's humanize this process. And I kept figuring out who pays for services like that. So in some ways, while I've never formally worked for corporate America, they've been my bread and butter for 26 years because I can provide for them a bridge that they normally cannot get from within their systems.
Excellent. Okay. Beverly, did you go right into your own business or did you do the corporate?
I had 14 years of corporate in the UK.
And what was the jump? Yeah. How'd you make the jump? What pushed you to do that?
I quit the job, giving a resignation. I just stormed out of that place and never looked back. And everybody's going, oh, you'll never get a job because you didn't exit the right way. And so, so I quit. I did temp work for a little bit and I knew I wanted to have my own business. I thought I would be in hotel. I thought I'd go back to Jamaica, have a little B&B, a little something or a restaurant, because I really love taking care of people. So that's what I thought I was going to do. And then handwriting just fell in my lap. I applied for a job. They wanted my handwriting to be analyzed. I got the job. I loved the people I was working with. And I just wanted to know, how did this team of women, it was 11 of us, and we were just fantastic, all of us together. And I wanted to know how this team of women had come together and we'd all been analyzed. And so it was from there, I didn't wake up one day and say, oh yeah, I want to be a handwriting expert.
Right.
It worked that way.
Right.
So it's like it found me. And then the person who introduced me to handwriting analysis became my mentor for many years. Woman, she was fantastic. And then when I got married, I was only looking at profiling in handwriting. And then when I got married to a lawyer who had a forged document, and I didn't know how to examine forgery, forged signatures. And he says, you need to go back, honey, and study some more. If you don't know this part. You have a master's in handwriting analysis and you don't know how to do forgery. No, that's a whole separate thing. So I went back and studied some, and now the tables have turned because there's less people. I'm doing less profiling and more and more fraud, because obviously as the economy changes, crime increases, and
Right.
through the yang, nobody can actually understand, well, how does she really make money? Well, people are dishonest, and because we're not dishonest, people can't even wrap their head around
Mm.
how can she do that? So can I
Yeah.
make one plug about PayPal? That I never borrowed any money from anywhere because could never get it.
Mhm.
Be jumping hoops, filling this, give me a 5-year plan, blah, blah, blah. But then a lot of my clients pay on credit card. And so PayPal could see how the revenue, how the sales were coming in, and just offered me money. He sent me an email that says, you qualify for this amount of money because you bring in this amount of money. So for small business, I really highly recommend PayPal. It's easy. You don't have to do the 5-year plan.
Right.
You have to do all that stuff.
All right, cool. Melissa, you did the corporate stint did you, or because you kind of started Tassl, but you were doing it together? Okay.
I love that you think I'm younger than I am, Lee, but I did 6 years in corporate before.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, before I left.
All right. So what propelled you to leave corporate to do this?
Weirdly enough, and I think this shows how little I knew about startups, I left my corporate job for more stability. I was in a company and I loved what I was doing. I was working with data, but to continue to move up in the company involved a lot of moving around. And I did that a lot as a kid, and I really wanted to kind of plant roots somewhere. So I quit. They made it very hard to quit. They actually avoided canceled meetings for 3 weeks. That's the point where I had to just call and be like, you guys got to let me quit. I know you know. They were very supportive in what I was doing. And there a lot of people are still, good friends of mine to this day. And it was something I just felt really, really passionate about. And I had talked with people in the industry and knew there was a big need for it. And I also had pitched the idea to somebody who I knew in technology who did a lot of freelance work and wanted to be my CTO. So I felt like that was a good place to start. We did, bootstrap hard at the beginning for the first 2 years. We worked odds and end jobs. I did freelance marketing for a bunch of different organizations, and he did website stuff for other companies. So it was definitely a huge change of pace from my corporate job. My company paid for my home internet, my car, everything. So making that adjustment was a little bit challenging. I was fortunate that I had been saving a lot. I wasn't really spending much of my salary I was getting as a young adult, but that gave me a cushion. So I knew I had a period of time to try this. Otherwise I'd have to probably go back into corporate America, and things just had worked out from a timing perspective.
Right. And Kathryn, you said you were at J&J, right? So what propelled you to start this business?
Yeah, well, I remember I started at J&J, I think it was 3 days after I graduated from Penn State. So graduation was a Saturday, and I think Tuesday was my first day. So it was right out the gate, and then was just at J&J bouncing around functional areas and operating companies for about 10 and a half years before I took the terrifying and exhilarating leap into entrepreneurship. So for me, I think there was just, there's kind of, if I'm going to oversimplify this, but there was the short term and the long term for me. So the short term was corporate America, right? It was a job I could do with my eyes closed. Mm-hmm. You get so well compensated, especially once you're an entrepreneur and you're like, oh God, I had no appreciation for the perks, right? For having a cell phone bill that's just paid by somebody.
Yeah.
And, it's just great. I literally remember being like, oh gosh, I have to figure out how to set up a Verizon account. I don't even know how to do this. And so there's so much safety and security, and it's so easy to sort of stay there day to day to day. But if you take a step back and you really, for me, it was almost like a borderline existential crisis of when I'm 65, what do I want to have done? You know, do I want to have made J&J shareholders even wealthier? That's important, of course, but like that wasn't the passion, the purpose, the meaning that I wanted to have in my life. And it was listening to the first episode of How I Built This with Sarah Blakely, who's one of my idols.
Yeah.
And just listening to it and just feeling this very incredibly like deep, visceral feeling of like, that is what I'm supposed to do. This is my path. I'm going to build a company. I want to inspire other women the way that Sarah Blakely inspires me. I want to make something that is solving a need in the marketplace, that is making people live healthier lives, to make them feel better about their choices. And it is a grind every day. And I don't mean every day like Monday through Friday. I mean every single day.
Yeah.
It is Christmas morning. It is New Year's Eve night. And it is such hard work, and in the short term, right, it's super painful. You work all the time. You have to figure out how to set up a Verizon account. You have to like scrape by doing little jobs and living off all of the savings from your Lux corporate days. But you know, the long-term payoff, I think, is so much more than any kind of, you know, financial exit or otherwise. It's about really building something that lasts and that has made an impact on people's lives in a really tangible way. And so I think that was what gave me the courage to leave the safe shores of corporate America and make the leap into the terrifying waters of entrepreneurship, was knowing that on the other side of it, you could be somewhere really special.
Yeah. And again, you know, just for the people listening, the diversity of why people started it, right? And I think the other thing that we often share a lot with young people is that the average age of a startup founder is 42. Okay, there's plenty of time. Like if you don't, and this concept, and I don't remember who said it, but this concept of an overnight success, that does not exist. You just heard about them overnight. They've been working at it for a very long time. And I think the other thing that I heard, you know, is that, you know, starting your own business can be very much of a roller coaster, like that up and down, right? And if you like that kind of thrill ride, great. If you don't, that's okay too. I've always said a lot of people, there's a lot of mythology around entrepreneurship. And I think, you know, entrepreneurs are often people that couldn't cut it in the corporate world or didn't want it, right? And so they chose a different path. And I think that's good. Another question, because we have about 15 minutes left. Anne wants to know, what do you wish someone had told you when you first started your business? So if there's one piece of advice that you wish somebody had told you, that either would have made it easier or just you wish you'd known. And we will start with Jess this time.
Oh, wow. It's a great question, Anne. I would say that I wish that, you know, and I did start my company when I was 21, and I think I wished, and this is something I'm pivoting into my business now. You know, I've run a consulting business for 26 years. I'm starting to build an online education platform so that I'm able to take all this knowledge and earned wisdom with my clients and turn it into personal and professional development programs online. And part of that is about helping people design a life that they love. Yeah. And I wish that somebody would have told me, even as young as I was, I don't know if I would have listened, but I guess if I could live life in reverse, it would be, don't be afraid to design a life that you love on your own terms too. Because, you know, I think everybody, it's illustrative in this conversation with everybody on this panel. We all have 4 completely different paths of what brought us to where we are. And I don't think we get reinforced with that enough. You know, we see the same founders on the covers of magazines. There's a lot of girl bossing going on in the world, but the reality is there are tons of ways to be successful in your life. And some of it might not be that you're going to become Sarah Blakely or Sophia Amoroso or anybody in that capacity. Some of it can be that you are an entrepreneur that creates a lifestyle and a business for yourself that helps you live a life that you desire, that lets you travel where you want to travel and grow what you want to grow and spend time doing what we want to spend doing. So I think sometimes, like, I like to challenge the notion of success for entrepreneurs, because not everybody shares the same success model, and find what makes you joyful, and know that, by the way, that's going to change with ages and stages of life. But that ultimately, I hope that those new entrepreneurs that go into business, A, to solve a problem, or B, to, be creatively self-expressed, or to bring something new to market, are also remembering how to live a life well-loved and well-lived. Because I've also met incredible and known incredible founders who never got to see their companies turn into success for a variety of different reasons, health, tragedy, beyond. And I think if anything this last year has taught us is what is most essential is who we love, how we're spending time. So I think those are messages I would have loved to heard reinforced from folks when I was starting out.
Right. Excellent. Melissa, what do you wish somebody had told you?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's one of the things I didn't know that I wish I would have known was more around the different skills I was going to learn and be able to master, and kind of playing along what Jess had said, you end up finding things that you really enjoy that you didn't expect you enjoyed, and like building around that in your day to day. Like I came in with the background in business, marketing, and advertising. I spend a lot of time with my developers coding and doing code reviews and designing features. I can code in 6 different coding languages. I didn't know I would ever know how to do that. And I love it. It's one of the things that I wish I knew I was going to love and learned earlier. I was always so scared of it. And so I think just not being afraid to, especially as you're trying to explore and figure out, the direction of your company, explore and get your hands dirty in all pieces of it, because you don't know which are the pieces you're going to love the most, and then build your role around that and hire or get people to do the stuff you don't like.
Excellent. Beverly, what's the one thing you wish somebody told you?
How to diversify, because I started profiling and doing handwriting analysis, and as I said, it wasn't until my 10th year I became really successful, and that was because I wrote a book on handwriting. I wrote a book because no one was taking me seriously, and someone says, "Oh, write a book about what you do." I don't want to do an academic book, so I just did this fun book, Finding Mr. Right, and Random House picked it up.
Oh, I love that name.
It's all over, game over.
Love it.
71 media interviews in 6 months, and so that changed the whole platform of my company and the way I worked. So.
Yeah, and it's one thing that we've learned with the pandemic, right? Resiliency and being able to pivot. Let's use all these bullshit bingo words. Pardon my French. Oops, probably shouldn't have said that. But it's late. But being able to see those opportunities, right? A lot of you started because of an opportunity you saw, but being able to see that opportunity and how the landscape is shifting. So, Kathryn, what's the one thing you wish somebody had told you?
Whatever you plan that you think is going to happen, it's not going to.
It's not going to.
Every now and then you might plan to launch, and 4 weeks later, the world shuts down. You don't know.
Yeah.
So I would say plan for the, plan for the best, prepare for the worst, right? And just know that you are going to hit sometimes little road bumps. Sometimes you're going to hit a crater. Sometimes it's going to be in the first mile of a 300-mile journey, and sometimes it's going to be somewhere in the middle. And just know it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have really, really hard days, and you're just going to have to keep pushing forward.
Right.
And you're not going to want to, but you just have to. And just prepare that in your mind, no matter how beautiful your business plan is, no matter how much you're like, I have this great idea, and whatever, you're going to encounter the things that you can never anticipate, right? Nobody anticipated what the heck has happened in the past 12 months. I think the only example I've heard of anybody anticipating is Wimbledon, which had insurance against a global pandemic. The only one I know of.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah, definitely. Well, and I think
just know that's going to happen.
As as people hear this, right? We know it's this roller coaster. It's these different things. And one of the things, if you know that you like those little things that go bump in the night, so to speak, that you don't expect, And if you like the challenge of being able to say, okay, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to MacGyver this. I don't know if the kids know MacGyver, but I'm going to figure this. I used to say A-team and dated myself. I bet you probably only one of you know what the A-team is. But if you enjoy that kind of stressful creativity, you know, owning a business could be the thing for you too. I think we probably have at least time for two more questions. So another question was, you know, you guys have talked about networking a lot. You've talked about building skills. So talk about if you had a mentor that made a significant difference in your life, personal or business, right? And what might you share with people about the mentor relationship that you've learned over time? And we'll start with Jess.
Okay. I actually had great support when I was at Penn State from teachers about kind of where I was wanting to do, what I was wanting to do next, but it wasn't fully baked by the time I graduated. And so I would say that I didn't really have a formal mentor till many, many years later. And I think what that did was help me to have a desire to mentor other people when I felt like I was at a position to do so. I believe in the idea of reverse mentoring. I think you can learn from people at all different ages and stages of life. I don't necessarily think you have to seek a mentor who's exactly in your field or is older than you. I learned a tremendous amount from teenagers that I'm mentoring, vice versa, and giving back. Again, this goes back to my passion around relationship and building a relationship that really matters. And so I've had wonderful, you know, people in my life that have done that. I think one of the things that kind of I didn't get to mention about my journey into entrepreneurship is I started it as a nonprofit. Moved out to Hollywood 20 years ago to figure out how to basically, you know, make some change in the belly of the beast and, you know, advertising and marketing and whatnot. And along the way, what I've learned about those relationships in business is that I ended up turning to my dad as he retired from the medical finance world and brought him in to my space because I trusted him more with my money than some of the folks I was meeting out here in Los Angeles. And, you know, ended up the two of us together. My dad was an entrepreneur. My dad worked in corporate America for almost 40 years. And that's another course for people to consider. He innovated from within a system. He never had the ability to be a full entrepreneur. And so when I invited him in to become the CFO of the business, and we've built, you know, a big part of this business together, you know, in some ways our relationship really transformed. And I got to take and get a lot of advice from my father about his corporate experience, but apply what I wanted to take from that into the work that I was doing. And so that was an unexpected change in relationship that I kind of wanted to acknowledge. And he's still my CFO to this day, almost 16 years later after retirement. But I think together we both kind of really believe in just, again, in the power of long-term relationships and finding to help out. And so I have now mentees in my life who I've known since they were 15 or 16 years old, who are now, you know, running businesses or in other kinds of jobs. So I feel like for me, I didn't have a strong initial mentor, and that kind of really guided me to care about that as a principle in my life going forward.
Excellent. Beverly, a piece of advice about the mentor relationship.
Mentor relationship. Well, you have to trust the person that is mentoring you. You might not always agree with what they're suggesting. They've traveled that path already and you can see their success. So my mentor was the lady that introduced me to handwriting analysis. And she was just so generous and she just gave me so much of her time. And when I met her, she was living in a Muse cottage behind Buckingham Palace. So I don't want to live behind Buckingham Palace. I want to live in Buckingham Palace. Nice. You know, so, but it was just her lifestyle and just everything about her. And as my company grew, the only thing she promised me was she had Mont Blanc as a client, and she said, as long as you don't take Mont Blanc. So when Mont Blanc approached me years later, I said, I can't.
Oh, okay.
I promised my mentor, and I called her and she says, I was kidding.
them all blog back and say, I'm kidding. Yeah.
So anyway, but I adored her. I mean, she's alive still, but she has dementia.
Hmm.
We used to have lots of talks together, and every book that came out, she would call the book her grandchild, because she felt that I was a part of her family.
Right. That's back to that long-term relationship that Jess is talking to.
And like Jess, I started mentoring. I didn't think I could mentor anybody because I'm just a renegade person. I don't do anything by the book. And so I didn't want to give anybody immoral advice.
Right.
But I just started mentoring 2 young women, and they are a joy. They really are a joy.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Melissa, what's your advice on mentorship?
Mine would be that your mentors are going to come from all different walks of life, and they're not going to necessarily be mentors you get by signing up to be part of a mentorship program. They're going to kind of come out of nowhere sometimes. And you're going to have a lot of little mentors, and to really kind of value and develop those relationships is really important. I know one of the mentors of mine that comes to mind, I met because I went to an event at the Union League where I was one of 2 women, and one of the women was a member there who asked to have a drink with me at the bar, and then introduced me to her neighbor, who was the VP of marketing for Audible before it sold to Amazon, and he was also the VP of Weight Watchers globally. He's on my board. He's somebody I call for questions about marketing, and he's been a huge support of me and my company, and I have experienced some rough health issues over the last 2 years that he's been really supportive of as well. And so it's one of those weird things that I would have never met him at any, formally anywhere without kind of just falling into a relationship where he's just really given me a lot of guidance. So they're going to come out of a lot of different places. So don't feel like you have to sign up to be in every mentor program. Sometimes the more natural relationships, really become the best ones.
Right. And I know a lot of the students that I work with, Jess, you were talking about your dad, right? A lot of them don't think that their parents know anything. And I know that's a function of age, but sometimes, right, they can actually, if you look at what they did in their jobs and in their lives, they can be a great source of mentorship. We are just about out of time. I want to ask each of you to give the people that are listening in one action or resource. If I'm interested in maybe looking at this entrepreneurial journey, right, what's the one thing resource-wise that you think they should tap into? And it can be a book, a podcast, whatever. And we'll start with Beverly.
Oh,
I put you on the spot. I know.
Yeah, because I just need to think a little. I thought of something and then it was said earlier. Can you go to somebody else and I come back?
Absolutely. Kathryn.
Can I cheat and give 2 suggestions?
Yes, go for it.
So the first one's the podcast, How I Built This.
Awesome.
It's just, I love it, because it's like all these amazing companies we know, and every podcast episode starts with I had this a brilliant idea, and then we did this, and then this happened. And it's dun, dun, dun. And it's this very kind of behind the scenes, I think someone said stealing from Peter to pay Paul. It just actually shows you the grit behind it. Airbnb is another great one. They talk about the binder full of credit cards that they had trying to fund their business. So I'd say How I Built This is a great one for inspiration. And then my second one, honestly, is, it's cheesy, but Google. It is amazing the amount of information out there that's free that will just tell you how to do this. So just Google it, read it, learn it, maybe read a few articles on a topic before you decide you know it. But, it's amazing the resources that are out there. So definitely take advantage of those.
Excellent. Melissa, what resource do you think they should check out?
Yeah, just to add what Kathryn said, not only the free resources out there, if with an EDU email address, you as students get access to even more free resources, and you have amazing resources on campus that I wish I had as an entrepreneur. So take advantage of your time while you're at Penn State to access those resources and become familiar with them, and fail a little bit, experiment with ideas, work with businesses downtown, and get that experience of bootstrapping and putting together projects and solving problems and getting comfortable with that.
Excellent. Jess, what about you?
I would say check out the book I mentioned by Natalie Molina Nino called Leapfrog Hacks, especially for those who don't historically come from money, who come from different, backgrounds that getting financed can feel challenging. It's even beyond that. It's, I think, for people who want to break the system and do things a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about capital. It's not just about raising capital. It's about all kinds of ways to think about entrepreneurship. And then the other thing I would say is just continue to talk to people. Like this panel hopefully is very helpful for folks to hear 4 different founders' points of view, but continue to talk and absorb other people's stories and understand that entrepreneurship, success, and pathways all vary for different folks so that you can shape and make the pathway that will work best for you.
Excellent. Beverly.
Yes, I think it's because I said it already. So
okay.
Part of it is the support system. I think it's very important that you build a strong support system, not just a networking system, but your own personal support system.
Yeah.
Your family, your friends, the people that you can call on, just when you're frustrated or having a good or a bad day. And then I had said about PayPal that they are so helpful with small businesses, and they don't advertise it in any way, but they really are.
Excellent. So we are out of time. I want to thank this amazing group of founders for your insights. For those of you who are looking into this, there's a lot of good stuff happening in Startup Week. There's a startup market tomorrow from 4 to 5 that's going to help you about resources at Penn State. And in the shameless self-promotion category, LaunchBox, right? If you are interested and have an idea, we're happy to help you navigate all those different resources. So you can reach out at us at launchbox.psu.edu. So can we get, I know you can't see it, but let's do a round of virtual applause for our amazing entrepreneurs. Thank you again so much for your time. I love hearing your stories and all the advice you gave. And we had quite a crowd. So let's hopefully, I'll let you know if it's the most. Amy's going to let me know if this was the best, mostest attended of all. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Anyway, thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck.